ends up if you feel bad about not feeling good all the time, right here, right now. Well, okay, so I used to. The reason, lack of self acceptance. Now, you might be hearing that like, say, what? What does that have to do with why I feel like ish? Okay, hear me out. So keep watching because I am going to explain what I mean, what self acceptance is, why you should even care, how to actually start accepting yourself more right now, and I'm about to break it down. So, hey, just so we're acquainted, I'm Johnna Renée, evidence based certified life coach here to share all of the ish that I wish someone would have told me about self discovery and self acceptance so that you can be fully prepared to confidently navigate this human experience thing that we're all flailing around in. And to make sure that you subscribe, because I post new trainings every week where I talk about this kind of stuff and more. So, okay, let's get into it for today. What is self acceptance? So, self acceptance is the precursor to self love, right? Because you can't love something that you don't accept. And self acceptance is impossible without self discovery because how are you supposed to accept something if you don't even know what that thing is, right? So these things all kind of tie in together, this ball kind of thing. And just so that we are clear, whenever I say self acceptance, what I mean is allowing yourself to feel what you are feeling and accepting that what you're feeling is, valid. And that includes the comfortable parts and the uncomfortable parts. That includes stuff you're proud of and the stuff that you're not. And whenever you are in a position where you are practicing self acceptance, that means that, sometimes it's not going to feel good. Sometimes it's not going to feel good for you to be in this human experience, right? And whenever you find yourself in those times, not judging yourself for not feeling good. Because if you, for example, wake up and think, like, I should go to the gym today, quote unquote, should, right? I should go to the gym, like it's 5, but I really don't want to. Like I was up late last night and it's cold outside. My bed's really comfy, but oh God, like I know that this is good for me. Like I know that my health is important. I'm trying to lose some weight. What's wrong with me? Like, why am I not excited to, go work out? Like, why can't I do this thing? Like, why don't I want to do this thing? The thought that, or the fact that your expectation of what you should be doing, how you should be feeling, is in opposition to your internal experience and what you're actually feeling, like the reality of what is internally your feelings and state of mind. The fact that you've got that struggle, that conflict, right? That in and of itself can make you feel bad because you think that quote unquote should be, doing this thing, the toxicity of should, that you should be, you know feeling some kind of way about doing this thing. That's going to make you feel bad if you don't actually then feel that way. And we can talk about why you don't feel that way. If you're trying a new gym routine, for example, then it's going to be something that's foreign and unknown. Your body's going to resist against it anyway, because 95 to 98% of everything we do is on a subconscious level. If, for example, you're someone who does work out and it's, normal for you to wake up and go to the gym at 5 in the morning, but you just don't feel like it. Well, okay, what is that telling you? Like maybe you're tired. Maybe you just don't want to. Maybe there are some alternative stressors that are happening in your life that don't make that feasible for you today. And instead of shaming yourself into doing what you think you quote unquote should, then just acknowledge that you're having a day that doesn't feel so great. And that's part of it. It is okay to not feel okay, right? Like, I don't know if you need that permission slip, but I'm giving it to you. Okay. So self acceptance is the observation and the acceptance and the acknowledgement that, yeah, sometimes you don't want to do the things, and that's part of life, right? And so, what self acceptance is also is accountability. Because while that's all well and good, like let's acknowledge it and stuff, it's also loving yourself enough to call yourself out on your own BS. Because I'm guilty of this. I will give myself too much grace. I'm like, no, it's fine. Like, you've had a long day. Oh, well, it's fine. You give yourself a break. I give myself all the grace. And great. But at the same time, there comes a point when you overgrace yourself and it becomes self-sabotagey because you just allow in all of the things when really you need to have the discernment to step back and be like, wait a minute, I am lying to myself and I need to get it together. And sometimes that means recruiting a friend. But oftentimes, if you take that objective point of view and step back, you can realize it yourself. So it is also the accountability. And another thing about showing yourself these, you know, these things when it comes to self-acceptance and, calling yourself out, that is a way of showing yourself love. And that's not possible without self-acceptance. And again, it only comes from self-discovery. So if you are curious about some more ways to discover yourself, then definitely check out my last two videos for a two-part deep dive into self-discovery and a really cool way to measure your success in that regard. So we've talked about what self-acceptance is. Let's touch on what it's not, shall we? So self-acceptance is not giving up. It is not tolerating toxic behavior. It is not staying in situations that no longer serve you or that have reached their expiration date. And it is not being complacent. So I don't mean accept things in the sense that like, oh, well, this is just the way it is, or this is just who I am. I don't mean that. I mean, don't fight against the things, acknowledge the way that things are. And while, you might not want to fight against them in the sense of let me ignore them, pretend like they don't exist, or let me, you know, try to combat that part of myself by, making it something that it's not. See it, accept it, acknowledge it, and decide what you want to do about it. Take the power back. Self acceptance is important because the most impactful thing that is going to change most people's lives is not actually the changing, but rather the accepting of who they already are. And so it is with that acceptance that you get to relax into who you are, right? So again, when we talk about that opposition and that conflict and that contrast, and if I'm always pretending that I'm not who I actually am, instead of just admitting, hey, this is part of who I am, then you're always going to be having an internal struggle, right? You're always going to be at war with your identity. But whenever you accept that this is who you are, then it becomes more malleable, right? Like you're not resisting it. So if you think of this like a wave, I like to use that way to explain it. Like if you were to fight against a wave, you're probably going to lose, right? But if you were to learn how to accept, hey, this is the wave, and learn how to navigate it, things are going to go a lot smoother, right? You're going to be able to learn how to surf. And so that is the notion that I want to just plant in your awareness whenever you're thinking about this concept of self-acceptance, because it's very freeing. It's very freeing whenever you arrive at a place where you're just like, yeah, this is who I am, take it or leave it kind of a thing. And as long as you are okay with it, then, that's powerful. And it's validating when you can have an inner reality without judging or criticizing or believing that it's wrong for, having that experience, that believing that you're wrong, for having that experience in the first place. Then you are validating who you are and you're validating your sense of self and your identity. And when you do that, when you acknowledge that, hey, this is my reality, this is my experience, this sucks, and how do I process it? And let me start to do that. You're building resilience, right? When you can accept that these things are difficult and problematic, thoughts do happen, and, feel into those and what they're telling you and learn from them, that's when growth happens. That's when healing happens. And that's whenever you are setting yourself up to build inner trust, to build confidence, to increase your self-esteem, and to fearlessly face whatever life may bring you. Granted, sometimes it is still scary, right? But you're going to be more prepared to navigate it because you're used to transmuting it in that way. You're used to acknowledging it, seeing like, hey, I see you, fear. And that's uncomfortable. And that means there's an opportunity for growth. And by moving through it, I'm going to get to it kind of a thing. And so, yeah, that is why it's so important. And so the problem with not practicing self-acceptance is that this is really the root of a lot of mental health struggles. Whenever you are in a place where you are denying your internal experience, then you are in a position where you're at war with your identity. Like there's a contrast, there's a conflict, and you're presenting this fake version of yourself, and you're placing unrealistic expectations on who you quote unquote should be. And the friends that you are making, well, how are you supposed to know if they're even your friends if you're presenting a false version of yourself, which just creates more anxiety, more stress, more of an expectation to live up to the pseudo version of yourself that you've created, this facade, if you will. And that's, I mean, Jesus, that makes me feel like I need a brown paper bag just thinking about it. It's overwhelming and it is exhausting. Whenever we don't practice self acceptance, it's also invalidating. You're denying yourself when you deny your own feelings. Just like whenever someone else tells you, like, don't feel like that, like, oh, you know, don't say that, like you shouldn't feel that way, like don't feel bad. That is invalidating the fact that you do, right? Like it's denying the fact that, hey, this is what's true for me right now. And so whenever you do it to yourself, you are invalidating yourself, like you're self-sabotaging, you're getting in your own way. And when you do that, like it makes you feel bad. And so that, in and of itself is the problem, right? Like when you feel bad, like you don't want to do anything. And whenever you are expecting yourself to have this other kind of a mentality, you get caught in a wheel, you get caught in a circle, and it just goes around and around, and it makes you feel bad. So now let me know what self-acceptance is, what it's not, why it's important, and what happens when we don't practice self-acceptance. How do we do it? I want to give you a quick disclaimer on this, and that is to be objective. I want you to put on your researcher hat whenever you're going into doing this work and not judge what you're feeling. I want you to approach everything from the stance of remembering that it's all just R&D. It is all just research and development. And that if you need, remember what your self-regulation tools are. If you are not talking about, head back to the self-discovery video part 1, where we touch on those, and know when and where to apply them. You can always pause the video. You can always, step back. You can always, give yourself a moment, whether that be in any situation with any person. You can always say, I need a minute. I'll be back in 10. Or I want to talk about this, but now's not the time. Like you have that power, right? So flex that muscle. And when it comes to self-acceptance, I want to bring that to you because this can be something as you are looking at these parts of yourself that you haven't looked at maybe ever. It can be an uncomfortable situation. So I'm going to put that disclaimer there. Give yourself space. This is not to judge or feel bad. This is to learn so that you can have more data so that you can decide what you want to do with it. So with that being said, we're going to go over 5 steps for self-acceptance. So number 1, decide that it is okay to not be okay. There's a ton of power in this decision because that just removes that pressure, right? It just takes off the expectation and the pressure that, hey, like I quote unquote should be this way, think this thing, whatever the case may be. So just decide that it's okay if you don't feel okay. Number 2 is to become aware. Like what's happening? Like don't just live in the experience, but take an objective point of view and a mindful approach. Is what people mean when they say mindful, is just start to become aware of what causes you to feel some type of way, right? Like what things do you not know a lot about? What things are foreign to you when it comes to self-acceptance? What things do you not look at? Is there a part of you in the mirror that you just like avoid to look at? Is there a part that you always just judge? Like where, become aware of where the self-acceptance is or is not happening. And also the self-judgment, because if you were judging something, chances are you were not accepting it. So number 3 is once you have that awareness and once you've decided it's okay to not be okay, you have the awareness of, what the things are, you're sitting with it, you're observing it, you're feeling it. What is it that you were feeling? So get curious. How does this thing feel emotionally? How would you describe it? How does it feel physically in your body? If you are recognizing that, hey, there is, let's say, a nervousness feeling, then what does that feel like in your body? Does that feel like sweaty palms? Does that feel like, a feeling in the pit of your tummy? Like, what does that feel like physically? And why do you feel that way? So this whole step, number 3, is to get curious and consider that the only way to it is through it. And again, remember your self-regulation toolkit. Remember, you can always take a pause. Remember that you are in a position where you got your researcher hat on, and so you're looking at this from a non-judgmental point of view. If you do start to judge yourself, name that gremlin, and so give it a name. So instead of saying like, "Oh wow, like I'm being really hard on myself," you can say, "Wow, Tony the um, judger is back," or Judy. I like Judy because Judge Judy is an actual judge. So yeah, Judy is being judgy again. And they are judging the way that I look today, let's say. So, get curious about like, what it is. So like if Judy is judging the way that you look today, then why is she doing it? What is she judging? Like what things is she picking up on? And this gremlin naming, what that does is that removes the internalization from like, oh, this is something that I'm doing, and puts it in an objective point of view where you can say like, oh, well, this is this thing that I do on occasion. See the difference? Subtle shift. Also, you can always recruit a professional. You can hire a coach. You can work with a therapist or a counselor or whatever you feel would best support you as you are getting curious around what it is that you are and are not accepting about yourself. The fourth step here is to practice non-attachment. And so non-attachment is not the same as detachment, right? So there's a difference. So detachment is I am shutting it down, I am blocking it, I am not looking at it, like we are not processing it, I am cutting ties, detached. Non-attachment is recognizing and acknowledging that something is there, but not becoming defined by it, not prescribing like a meaning to it, right? It is being aware of the thing and recognizing that that doesn't define you, that doesn't define who you are. It is something that is happening. It is an experience that you had. And while important, it is not anything that you need to put a lot of weight on, right? So you're aware of the thing, you know it's there. What's it trying to tell you? Remove the negative or positive charge from it and look at it from an objective point of view, and just take that researcher stance again, and like what is this data telling me? What is this thing telling me without, really attaching your like any kind of meaning to it about like who you are, like what that says about you, or you know how that defines you, or anything like that. So that is what I mean by practice non-attachment. And the last thing here that I want to mention when it comes to how do you self-accept is give yourself time, right? Just because you are now aware of the fact that you want to accept yourself, that's awesome. First of all, awareness is the first step. Congratulations, kudos to you. And at the same time, recognize that that does not necessarily mean that, you know, everything is now going to fall into place, right? Because for however many years, that's not been the case. And so it is a situation where you now are in the process of like you've started it, right? Like just like when you're learning how to ride a bike, you don't just, oh, I see how it's done and then it happens, right? Like you've got to try a few times. You got to get on, like we got to try it with the training wheels. Okay, the training wheels feels good. Like I'm getting better at this. Like now let's take the training wheels off. So this is going to come with time and practice, and you know, do it without rushing, without trying to, have this deadline in mind. Do this to enjoy the process and to experience the process, because the more you experience it, the more you are going to be in the practice of accepting yourself. And whenever you start to do this, then a couple things will happen. Either whatever those judgmental thoughts are will start to float away, or you might, still have some of those judgmental thoughts. They might stay around for a bit. Both of them can be uncomfortable. Both of them are part of this human experience. And I want to note that there are layers to self-acceptance, right? Just like everything else. And oftentimes we find ourselves in a position where we keep repeating the same thing over and over and over again. And it very much becomes a situation where we will repeat it until we're like, well, I'm really tired of doing that thing, right? And it's at that point that we typically are like, okay, I'm ready to do something different. I'm ready to make a change. And we still might find that we keep hitting that wall, we keep hitting that obstacle, because even though we are consciously trying to create something new, this new experience, this change, doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Because again, like riding a bike, You gotta put in the hours, you gotta put in the efforts, you gotta try. And so that is something that I want to offer you when it comes to doing this work of self-discovery, self-acceptance, any kind of personal development work, any kind of self-help, because I think that that is a disclaimer that needs to be said, along with the fact that this is not a cure-all, right? Like some people need medication, some people need intensive treatment based on their circumstance and experience. And so if that is you, ask for the help that you need because it is available to you. So that is what I have for you today. Please do like this video and share it with someone that it can help as well. If you found it helpful, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell so that you'll be notified when the next training comes out. I'm doing these things weekly. And let me know any questions and comments in the comment section below, and I will make sure to reply. Go ahead and check out the links in the description as well to connect, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and have an awesome, awesome day.